Does it matter where your scientific research paper comes from? Well, today I'm going to say yes, it really does. Okay? Because the supplement retailer GNC just conducted a cross-sectional study about GLP-1 users. Okay. And they basically found that most users lack vital nutrients. But this was actually published in a journal called Frontiers in Nutrition. Okay. And the study is very scientific when you look at it. It's showing that they compared participant nutrient intake to the dietary reference intakes. Okay. So that all sounds very proper and, official.
Yeah.
But when you actually click on the study, okay, so what I saw was a press release for the study. And then I was like, something seems a little off here. So I clicked on the actual study. Then you start getting into the nuts and bolts. And then you start wondering, is this a study or is this marketing? Okay. Because their study, it was a sample of 69 adults, okay? 14 males and 55 females who had all been using GLP-1s for at least 1 month. 1 month, okay? So it's already kind of sounding a little absurd, right? But don't worry, it gets more absurd, I promise, okay? Yeah, I know. So, okay, their conclusion for the study was that GLP-1 users were not meeting that dietary reference intakes for several nutrients through their diet, and that higher protein need, they weren't meeting their nutrients or their protein needs during their weight loss, which sounds kind of vague. Okay. Yeah. But so here's where it gets a little interesting. The whole study is based off of survey questionnaires and a 3-day food journal. That's it. And this got published in like a trade thing where nutritionists post like actual real studies. Okay. Right. So to give you a little background, so GNC, they're a major retailer in the supplement market. For a long time, that's where you could buy protein powder. Like before it was available like at every grocery store, you had to go to a place like GNC to buy it. Back in April of 2024, they became the first major retailer to launch a support program for GLP-1 users. And their whole thing was they were going to fill nutritional gaps and support gastrointestinal, muscle, and bone health, which are all areas that most people that use weight loss drugs are affected on. Okay. Right. And so instantly my brain goes, they're just trying to sell supplements, because when you think about who GNC's target audience was before GLP-1s was a thing, it was people that went to the gym, people that, really wanted to use these supplements to, be healthier, live better lives, stuff like that.
And so I'm sure, gains.
Yeah. And so I'm sure at some point they realized they were losing audience. GLP-1 was becoming a big thing. So they said, okay, we'll just start making a program specifically for GLP-1 users since nobody else in the supplement space is doing that. Okay, so it makes sense to me. Now, so they did this study. They sent out survey questions. They had each of the participants do a 3-day log of what they were eating. They used the myplate.gov as far as like what a suggested serving size was so that people could say, this is how much I ate. But it wasn't like fact checked. It was all, based on what the user submitted. And they found based on this, okay, that participants ate about 20% less, but the calorie distribution and the protein intake was not optimal. Okay. So they're eating volume wise 20% less, but they're not getting enough calories and they're not getting enough protein. They also, claim that it's a significant percentage of the population was not getting enough micronutrients. Well, I have a problem with their wording because a significant percentage of the population, it's 69 people. Right. Okay.
This isn't statistically a sample size, like
No. And so the study basically said that participants, they did have too many calories, too much saturated fat, too much sodium, and not enough calcium, iron, magnesium, potassium, vitamin A, C, D, E, K, and choline. Also found that they lacked fiber, protein, and fruits and vegetables. Now, I'm going to go on a limb and say that's probably all of the US, even though it was only 69 people. Okay.
It's literally everyone, period, full stop.
Yeah. Because if you look at somebody who's only been taking GLP-1s for a month, the biggest problem with GLP-1 users, and I'm not saying all of them, I'm just saying the majority, they don't change their eating habits. They don't start choosing healthier foods. They eat the exact same thing way that they have, they just may eat less. And so they were probably already eating pretty calorie dense, high fat, too much sodium, and that's not really going to change. Right. Okay. Now, the co-author of the study, her name is Rachel Jones. She actually works for GNC as kind of like their scientist on board, if you will. Mm-hmm. She emphasized that there's an importance of educating consumers about muscle loss and that there were key opportunities for ingredients like high quality proteins, creatine, HMB, all used to counteract muscle wasting associated with rapid weight loss. Well, guess who just happens to sell all three of those things?
GNC.
Okay. Now, they also came out with things like, and these are like buzzwords, and whenever they put out a press release, then you have different press organizations that are going to pull this information and write an article about it. Right. And they're just going to cite the study and like a little link, and nobody's going to click on the link. But they are going to see stuff like 52% of the study indicated that they did not intend to stay on GLP-1s for long term. Okay. So keep in mind, that means 35 people out of 69. So that sounds a little bit different than saying 52% of study participants. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
51% said they received information about how to manage potential side effects.
So like
half, 35 people again.
Yeah.
20% were referred to a registered dietitian. That's from was giving them the GLP-1s. Okay. And so don't you think it's a little odd, first of all, that a supplement company is doing the research where they just happen to also sell the products that are the quote unquote cure for what the study findings are?
Yes.
Like, doesn't that feel biased?
Oh, 100%. Like, we've talked about like Americans and our protein levels and like the absolute obsession we like in general as a population have with like more protein. But like, so there's a lot of nuances that are missing from this. And I know a few people who are on GLP-1s right now. And depending on when you spoke to them, depends. And they only did a 3-day journal, which is where it gets problematic because the day after their dosage, they eat the least because it's such a high impact and it wanes over the course of that week until they go again. So depending on when that food journal is, if it's day 2, starts on day 4, whatever it looks like, if it's the day after, like I know one person I know has borderline no appetite the day after. And then it's much more normal the following day. So like there's a lot. And then
before their next dose, in theory, it would be at their highest. Yes. So it doesn't have any information here about when the last time they took a dose versus when those 3 days were.
Yes. So like that's incomplete data. But like 69 people is problematic in general. Like when you're doing a poll of the entire country, you have to do a certain percentage of people. And we're talking about like what?
0.00001% of GLP-1 users are identified here. But okay, so that brings up a good question. So how did they pick these lucky 69 people?
They're probably already customers.
Maybe. So once again, I went to their white paper, their official document, because in every study, it has to have like an abstract, what they're hypothesizing, what they're looking for, and it also has to give the method of how they got their research. So what happened is, the first thing they did was they looked for current users of GLP-1s for at least 1 month. We knew that. Yes. Second thing, they had to be willing to complete online survey questionnaires regarding their dietary intake and health habits. Seems pretty standard. 3, they had to be willing to provide a detailed 3-day electronic food record. 4, they had to at least be 18 years of age. So far, not a big deal. But then it gets to the point where it says participants were excluded from the study if they were currently enrolled in a nutrition program. They were also excluded if they were currently receiving meal plans. So now we're talking about GLP-1 users
Mm.
that are not currently taking advice from a registered dietitian or on some type of meal plan. Well, that right there kind of skews the data even more, I think. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
And originally, the total of participants was actually 99 people, but they ended up excluding people because they either didn't finish the surveys or they didn't actually submit the full 3 days of their food diary. So you see what I mean? So you took like 99 people, you had them do some surveys, you had them do a food record, okay?
Right.
And then a third of them didn't follow through. And then the ones that are left are the ones that you determined we're not on any type of dietary regulation or meal plan.
Right.
And most of the participants identified as white or Caucasian, 82%. So now, like, we're slowly making it to where this is a study of 69 people who are white, who are not changing their dietary habits. See, that right there skews all of their findings.
Yeah, because it's such a narrow group of people. So they're not actually looking at a general overall of GLP-1 users. They're looking at those that they want to target. Those that
And
they want to
I
bring into
wonder
the
if
fold.
if you look at the audience that GNC typically sells to, did that just happen to be white people? I don't know. I'm not a GNC customer, so I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, when they think of their ideal customer, does it just happen to be that? I don't know.
That's a good question. I really do
So,
wonder that.
but anyway, so this is just once again one of those things where just because a study is cited doesn't always mean that their conclusions are what you think they are. And
Right.
unless those numbers are put in context, and then even more, it really depends on who is doing the study and what exactly their outcomes or their conclusions are going to do for them. Because I feel like this is very biased. So let us know down below. Do you think GNC should be doing studies about supplements that people need since they sell supplements? And do you think that the conclusions from their study are even newsworthy when you actually dig down and see who was part of the study and what exactly the study was about? So let us know down below.